Hi everyone, this is Dr. Alana. It's a great day to talk about starting your graduate year strong through writing and good writing habits. And to get that started, I put up a poll asking people, uh, were you confident? And 5 would be a confident, have frequently received praise from others on your writing. 4, you don't freeze up, but you might worry about redundancy and whether or not your academic voice is as strong as you'd want it to be. 3, your confidence sometimes wavers about your writing. Sometimes you're on target, sometimes you're not so sure, and you might not always be clear on what makes that difference. 2, having to write fills you with dread. And if you're in that spot, you're not the only one. 1 is perhaps English isn't your native language, or you're unsure of your previous academic background and whether or not it's serving you well in this graduate environment. And then about 20% of the people who are here right now voted for a mix of those as well. So thank you for putting your 2 cents in. If you're just joining us, please do so. And for those watching by recording, that's the poll I'm talking about. Oh, welcome back. It's a new fall for many of you starting in the Northern Hemisphere. It's a big time of year. For those of you in the Southern Hemisphere, not so much. And I'm hoping if you are new to PD education and coming along to see what we're all about, that you've got your PD education sign on. I'm in the handouts and on the slides, you'll see a lot of links that I'm sharing for other resources after this that you might find interesting, but remember that you always have to sign on to your site first. And I'll be showing the site in a little while as too. If this content is of interest and you want to see more of this, I strongly recommend you follow that link and you join the academic writing group community. And what you get for that is a couple of things. Every so often, we're going to have just a chat, just an open office hours focused on the issues of writing and voice and all of those kinds of things, separate from all the rest of the stuff we do in graduate school. And also, whenever there is a webinar that is about writing or in one way or another, or should be of particular interest to people who are working on upgrading their writing, then those particular webinars you will have an invite to, and you will be assured that you will get the recording, whether or not you can come. So that's good news, and we hope that's of interest. If you've been here before, you know what a WooClap is. You can go right now on your phone or anywhere else and sign in to www.wooclap.com/AC writing. And you can ask an anonymous question, which we will focus on at the end of this conversation. And I already have one such question. So thank you for the person who figured that out and looked it up and got us started. Our goal for today is to offer ideas, tools, and resources to help writers at all stages. And the group here, pretty confident, mostly confident, and occasionally getting praise. So we want to up the praise, we want to up the confidence, and we want to help you sail into your fall well. Fall in the Northern Hemisphere well. So we're going to start with the concept. We're going to take on some kind of bigger concepts first. And I actually may get us out of here much sooner than an hour because there's not a lot of slides and some of the ideas are pretty straightforward and they're great to remember. So this is sort of a catch-up. We're going to talk about context in the terms of all of our writing. We're going to move from that into significance and how significance plays out no matter what you are writing. Keep the basic, then we're going to move into what we have done in other things. So I have resources for even a deeper dive into issues on basic structure, on how you put your ideas together, on the three tools that we use the most and when we use them. And then there's a little bit on how to use those things to develop what is really a good writing habit. You can consider that homework if you wish. I have a whole list of other resources and a small talk about what's next after that. But as we get started, I invite you all to take 3 deep breaths. And the reason I've come to do this is because I realize that we all rush many of us are living in a pretty remote world now. And so we may rush right into this. So take a minute and just make sure you are fully present here. The rest of the things going on in the background, that'll let you relax through this, and we'll all have a much better time. And I know that when I get ready for these, I have to remember that very much myself, because I'm in the same shoes you are as far as rushing right from one thing into this. If you haven't been part of one of our webinars before, even if you have, we're changing out our systems just a little bit. You are welcome to comment in the chat box on your own at any time. If you are mentioning something and I will look at the chat at the end of each one of the sections in case there's been chat that has come in about that section. That way we'll keep the project the whole time interactive. On the other hand, I have recently gone through our research, and one person did not like the fact that even though his or her name was in the chat, that I used it. So if you don't want your name mentioned, if you don't want me to say, Sonia said this and this, just put an X at the beginning of whatever you write. And I'll just say one of the people in the room said. So that's helpful. And we certainly don't want to out people unexpectedly. And yet the system knows who you are. So I think that's a good comment back. Once again, thanks for being here. And let's move right into writing and talk about context. I did this picture of a man who's obviously doing a scientific experiment because some of you will be in STEM, others will be in humanities, some of you will be writing research, and some of you will be writing for a class. Who knows? Maybe others here are bloggers. The most important thing, and I recommend that everyone who writes takes somewhere between half a minute and 10 minutes, depending on the complexity, and thinks about context first. So if you're writing a journal article, that's going to be the 10-minute one. You're going to want to review what other articles recently have come out in that journal. And you're going to want to be in the space of the reader and the editor of that journal when you write the article. If you're a STEM author, if you're writing anything, even classwork in the sciences, your language is going to be shorter and more definite and more specific. Whereas humanities have the luxury of bringing in a bigger element of the human experience into our writing. Each of us focus on different aspects of life and thought. And when we start off, just like we start off taking 3 deep breaths, we start off thinking about our context, it's much easier for us to play to our audience. And those of you that have heard me speak before know that, in my mind, every writer is writing to a reader, and you have to know your reader. And the reader is part of the context. So that gets us started. And now we have to move into significance. And notice I've got the globe there. It's easy enough to say, who cares about what we say? Giving you 3 examples of published writing. They're all dissertations or thesis, but they make for a good batch of things to think about. So Title, Impact of Cross-Industry Healthcare, Partnership on Economic and Quality Outcomes, and a focus on a specific patient pre- and post-implementation. The study takes a look into one healthcare's business partnership with industry, and through the application of a particular kind of business approach, this research provided an example of how health systems can successfully combat the vertical integrations through partnering, threat of vertical integrators through partnering. So, just if you're in the room and thinking about it, one, if this is of global interest. Two, if it's of national or specific to a field interest. And three, if it's good for a local context. Let's see how you vote. One, global. Two, either national or specific field. And three, local. And just type them in the chat. Get your 1, 2s, and 3s ready because we've got others coming. So we've got some votes for global. And we've got some votes for specific to the field or certainly a country. Would any of you have voted for 2 if I made that an option? Would you have said it was 1 and 2? And maybe 3, but we'll definitely 1 and 2. Okay, let's see. Let's go on to another one. So okay, same thing, 1, 2, or 3, or 1 and 2, 1 and 2 and 3. African Americans described experience seeking the church after a family member's violent death. And if we read the author's note, they say, as counseling professionals increasingly embrace multicultural competency therapy, the importance of religious and spirituality must be recognized by counseling professionals in integrating their work with this specific population. So, is it global? Is it national or to a specific field? Is it local? And by local, I think in this case, we might think of a particular smaller portion of the human population. We've got to vote for 2. Thank you for jumping in there. Who else? 2 and 1 together. 2. 2 and 3, that's fine. Okay, we've got our thought processes on, and global as well, because and Annalene is in Africa, so she brings up the context that it's a diverse population, and that population would have interest in different parts of the world. And pretty much the world has diverse populations. So, last one. Comparison of demographic profiles and academic outcomes of charter schools and traditional public schools in Fresno, Kings, and Madera and Tulare counties, which happen to be in California. This study compared charter schools and traditional public schools in Fresno in certain counties in California that were meaningful differences in demographics and academic outcomes. Okay, so we've got to vote for the international, global side of it, and we've got some votes for the local side of it. More votes in this case for the local, although I'm at least at the national level on this one. I would, not all parts of the world have charter schools, but I think the United States, all parts of the United States have charter schools. So I would have probably given it a 2 and a 3. You see what I'm doing here? I'm pointing out that authors here are trying to talk to more than one significance level. You too probably have that. You're probably, even in a classwork, you're probably speaking both to the class as you would be speaking to your peers and to your professor or other academics who are more advanced in the field. And probably even for classwork, you're working on advancing your language and your structure and your ideology and all of the parts of academic writing. In fact, I think in general, most of us are always speaking up to a bigger audience than we actually live in. Even when it's very finite research, these things are true. Okay, so first I've made you look at the idea of context in your writing. And now I've opened up this kind of can of worms about significance. And so the first concrete suggestion I'm going to make is, if you're in that place where you say, oh, I really do have multiple significance levels, then how do you manage that? Well, you can do it in two basic ways, two easy ways. You can say in your introduction, this article or this piece or this whatever has two levels of significance, plays to two audiences, however you want to phrase it. And you're going to lay out the headings so that this is the first thing you're going to talk about to one significant level, and this is another thing, the same thing to another significance level. And that way, if I'm reading and I don't care about the other significance level, I'm going to read your article for what's in it for me, then I'm going to skip through your headings. And that's good, because you've made it better and more accessible to your reader. Another way to do it is to, under each heading, separate the ideas and how they are significant to the different parties in a particular order. And generally, it's done in the same order we analyzed the last. International, national, whatever we call it, global, to the field, national, and then local. So it's like a funnel, and you're drilling down. And then you do it paragraph by paragraph, and you make sure that your major topics have all the paragraphs, and that your reader then can know that we kind of get it's the word I want, a flow, an understanding of the authors we're reading and how they put it together, a pattern in our mind. And then that's comfortable for us as readers as well. Okay, so then the two basics are in our mind. We've taken it just a minute. This whole last conversation that took us 15 takes you a few. And then you want to think, what are the steps? What's the structure here? So this is going to be review for, I'm sure, all of you, but we have to say it. First thing is, what do you want to say? And that's an argument. What are you saying here? Are you claiming something, an idea, to be true? If so, what's your evidence, and how can you tie that evidence back to your claim? Second thing, you want to always look, and this is in revision, are your ideas logical? Do they lead your reader to where you want them to go? And I have some tools about that. And have you done a good enough job of investigating the other side of the story? So you don't want to leave yourself open for criticism because you weren't aware that there's an entire field of study that totally disagrees with what you're saying. If there is, you should at least pay lip service to the fact that you know it's there, and that other people disagree with some of your thoughts. Okay, so that's the getting it started. Second thing then, once you know what you're going to say, how are you going to say it? And there's three tools I use all the time. If I am trying to sort out my big picture where what I want to say fits within a broader spectrum, or maybe my idea is complicated and I want to sort out how all the parts go together. I use a mind map. As you will have seen if you've watched any of the videos on using spreadsheets for lit review, if you want to categorize ideas, especially if you're in a position where you have to tie them back to lit, a spreadsheet's really handy because the left-hand column is the reference and the right-hand, and then you lay out in the columns the important points and then you sort the columns. And that easily gives you all the things you want to say under each heading. Very handy. Takes a bit to set it up, but very handy. And then funnels, like the one I have pictured here, you use for sprints. So I funnel a big book. I even funnel a book to some extent, but I funnel every chapter. And I funnel every section within a chapter if it's a complicated system. So I call those sprints. What are the big ideas my reader needs to have? How do I drill down and where am I taking them? And I use that funnel and I put it on my Word documents and I figure it out, or I have a PowerPoint presentation going simultaneous to my writing. So I figure it out there. And I frequently write, in fact, almost always, when I'm writing, I am using more than one of these at a time. I have the luxury of multiple screens, so they'll be up on multiple screens around me. Keeps my head straight through complex things, and I write books. So there's a lot of moving parts when you're writing a book. Bottom line is you have to know you'd want the journey your reader to take. That's everything, really. If you're good about that, you know your reader, you're going to be fine. Now, the basics that we all use, call it to our attention. Headings are our guides. Headings guide our reader through our material. They keep you on course, you, the writer, on course, and they keep you, the reader, on course as well. The writer should use them to excite, in my opinion, should use them to excite the reader to go on to the next and next and next. Because in today's world, we lose readers faster than we used to because they have so many things they have to read. So let's give them headings that make it seem a little exciting and move them on. Paragraphs are underheadings, and paragraphs have to make one point. 2 or 3 sentences is fine, 1 point. In today's world, we want our readers to be able to skim through our stuff because most of them will. And then they'll slow down when they get to the parts of what we write that they find exciting. So let's help them skim well and keep them on course till they get to the exciting parts. And then finally, every section should start smart, interesting, good first sentences, intriguing first sentences, and they should finish with some kind of a transition to help the reader make it to the next section. Those are the basics. So I promised with this webinar that we'd get into habits, and it could be the writing 15 minutes a day habit if you are writing your dissertation or thesis. And then, I don't have it on the slide, but I have a lot to say that it is more important that you do a little bit of thinking and writing every day than it is that you think, oh, I'm going to do 5 hours on the weekend. Because having worked with hundreds and thousands of master's and doctoral students who've gotten way late and stalled, what has stalled them was the weekend came and other stuff that was urgent came up and they didn't get to the work they were required to do. So a little bit of coming into the place you work, your area, and having some small task that advances the bigger task, and it's the first thing you do. I developed this when I was a doctoral student, long time ago, and although I was a mature student, so really not 100 years, and um, it stayed me all the way through. So when I write a book, I get up and write before I have my first cup of coffee writing. When I have a big project, I still do the same thing. And even in my business world, I don't even sign in and tell them I'm at my desk until I've worked on the thing that I have to do that day. And it's a useful habit. So that I recommend. When it comes to other kinds of writing, the next and every time you write, use one of those design tools, your mind map, your spreadsheet, or your funnels, to get straight in your head where you're taking your reader. I would never recommend you pull up a Word doc and you just start writing, because you will have a lot of stuff that comes out of your head that doesn't serve your greater good, which is where you want to take your reader. So think, it seems a train starts on a track for a certain reason, and our tracks are our context, our significance, and where we're taking our reader. And then when you revise, that's when you become super critical of yourself about your headings. Do they lead your reader on? Are they in a good order? Do your paragraphs, do they only have one point? Do they add to the heading? Is there a good transition? Did you start smart? And I don't have it here, but I do have it in the tools. I strongly recommend for revision that you use Microsoft Word and you use the read aloud function, and you let Word read you the document. I learned on the last book, which I'm still desperately trying to get Amazon to get published, on the hidden curriculum of graduate school, that cut my revision time down to a third. Revision, you can't do enough of it, and if you have a big thing like a dissertation, a thesis, or a book, it just goes on and on and on and on, and it's really nice when Word helps you out by reading it. So I did have one question come in, and I'm going to look to see if others have come in the meantime. But one of you very well wrote in academic, that I want to upgrade my writing skills. Sometimes I don't feel academic enough. I often don't feel academic enough. I don't naturally fall into the kind of language. And so I have to, there's a couple of parts of this. You have to develop your own voice to some extent. So you want to go to where you're really good in academic, and then probably you want to back off some to be your own voice. You want to be true to your field. So if you're in STEM, it's a lot of words that would be jargon or too much specificity for the rest of the world, but in your field it's required. You have to get comfortable with that. You have to be able to put those words together in cogent sentences. And in order to do all of that, you need to read a lot. So it's nice to get away from this work and read other things, but if you have something academic that you are always reading, even if it's your 15 minutes a day, you just read something academic, your mind will absorb that voice, and it will be easier for you to picture where you want to go when you start to write. And then, as I said, turn on Read Aloud in Microsoft Word. And if you don't know, if you visited the PD Education site and you haven't searched on the MS Word as a search term, you might not have found the 15 video snippets that help you set up Word for academic writing, which leads me to a lot of other things that you might want to be aware of. So these are slides. These are all linked in the slides, which are in the handouts. So if you haven't downloaded the handouts and these are interesting, please go there. and do so. Going from personal to academic writing, it was one of the ones that are handout scripts. Exercises are usually Professora Maria's. And so if there's one that looks like that, there's going to be a video as well. So you can type in personal writing and you're going to find it. Problems to avoid when writing academically. You may not have everything you need to think about in your head about your bibliographic software. We don't recommend a particular one, but when I talk about it, I use EndNote as an example because it's the one I use. You might not have taken on board the ideas that academic writing can still be passionate. And in fact, there's lots of ways academic writing is passionate. I think it has to be passionate. We just get through our research. So, and what reflective writing is, and what self-voice is, and writing tips. So we have a variety of things. I'm speaking, I'll go back and look again at the poll, but I know I'm speaking to almost all of you were in the, I'm pretty good at this stage. And so what I hope is true in the last half hour is that you got some basic ideas that got the brain cells moving, and that then we have some links here where you can go in for some deep dives on this stuff that feels perfect for you. I'm going to look closely. Let's see. There are some academic writing questions that have come in. So let me take Erica's since hers are in the chat, and then we'll go into the questions. Erica asks, using the first person in proposal. Using first person. Okay, so the use of first person is shifting in academic writing, and part of that shift is being caused by newer methodologies, specifically autoethnography, which is a deep dive into personal. And so when 30 years ago, nobody would have used first person. In the sciences, it's still probably not all that well used, but I have a rule of thumb for it when I'm examining papers. My rule of thumb is, why are they using it? I want you to use first person if you're making a personal statement to me about the context of this work to you, about something that drove you to make a decision, about something that is a choice point within the strategic pattern that is research that was personal to you. Then I like first person. But in general, I like research to read like something separate from you personally, so that I can keep that objective mindset more easily as your reader. But you have to play to an audience, and when in doubt, you ask the people who are your first audience, which are your supervisors. But that's my rule of thumb as an examiner. And if I'm examining a paper that uses first person more than I feel comfortable with, I ask them, what do they think they're using it for? What did they hope to give me as their reader because of that use? So if you are using it, and it is comfortable for you to write in first person in a research term, then be aware that you may need to answer that question, and that's fine. Okay, let's go to WooClap. If I am not an early bird, is it possible to write in the mornings? How do you keep yourself writing in the mornings? Okay. Generally, when you read authors who write about writing, they all pretty much get up and write first thing. And I think that has mostly to do with the fact that our consciousness, as opposed to our rational mind, is more available to us when we haven't had a lot of other things impinge on us during the day. So if the early bird, sometimes I'm dragging, sometimes I have a cup of coffee in my hand and I'm dragging, but actually that's not such a bad thing if we're employing the creative consciousness that we're also born with, as well as our step-by-step rational mind. Now, if you're an engineer or a scientist, you may actually, to reverse that, like to write at the end of your day, if you can put the day aside and just focus on the work that led up to that. It might be a conclusion, because STEM and engineering, your work also feels more, as from a reader's point of view, like a conclusion. But at the end, we all have to find the time of day that we can do it all the time without having the rest of our lives take over instead. For me, it's morning. So I hope that's helpful. If not, come back with another question. WooClap will be open. Can you talk to us about using different tenses in the different sections of this dissertation? Not only in the different sections, but also in the different time periods. So if you're writing a proposal, then you're future tensing it. This is what your study will do. These are the questions it will ask, etc. Those wills turn to past tense at the final, because you're writing a finished document. So this is what the research did. This is how the methodology progressed. This is, so most of it is in past tense. This is what the results said. The results, although that you wouldn't use said because that would be anthropomorphism, you would say that what the results demonstrated, showed, and you then you get to the lit review part. Lit is always written in past tense, in that the authors have already finished their books, and so that is past tense. So authors always have talked in the past, even though our research will go on in the future, or now that I am done with my research, this is what did happen. Except when I get to the recommendations section, and then I might go into what I think would happen, and if certain people took me up on my recommendations and did other research. And I think that tense issue can work out if you just think about it in the way I just talked about it. If you're telling your story to someone else, you will much more naturally fall into the right tense. But at the end of these documents, if you are using your first 3 chapters that were your proposal and you're rewriting them again, you have to do a replace as and start looking for those words that probably are going to need to change to past tense, and then the sentence structure with them. I think it's a misnomer when people think they wrote those first 3 chapters and they're just going to turn them in again at the end, because I really don't think it's that simple. Okay, I wonder if you can share the difference between APA 7 and 6 when presenting quantitative results. I see the biggest, I actually have not delved into it, so I'm going to be a partial on this one. I have not delved into APA 7 when it came to tables. And so you may want to do a one-to-one on that. What I have, and tables would definitely impact quantitative results. I see the biggest great new thing in APA 7 is that they have sorted out the problem with when we do et al. In our references. So many of us are writing things. Yeah, I know there are more questions coming. I'll get back to them. There are more things that in the references. It used to be that you had to write, if you had more than 4 authors, 3 authors, you had to write the first three authors and then et al. For the first time, and then it was always the first author and et al. And da-da-da-da-da. And now it's the first author et al. All the way through. And that was really the brilliant one that I cared about. I haven't, although we will have APA 7, for you to know, will be coming up. We have a editing before you self-edit topic, and it's at a different time of day on a Monday. I'll talk about it in a minute. And Stephanie will talk about APA 7. So you could ask, I will tell her that question came up and see if she can answer it for you. Going back to the bottom, how do I upgrade my writing skills? I don't feel academic enough. I handled that one in. How do you avoid writing too much and narrow down on key issues? Well, you probably don't avoid writing too much. Some people write too little. It isn't everybody who writes too much, but I think the question really becomes one of specificity and how much specifics are required by your audience. So too much is when you've gone on too long and you haven't added anything new. But too much is not too much if you're going on in detail with a great deal of specificity and your audience requires it. So again, it's that context significance thing. If you're writing to change your field, you probably want to be good at both the big ideas that change the field and enough specificity that get the people who really are doing the same work you're doing to think differently. I think when students write too much, they're trying to prove something. They don't really know what they're saying, and so it kind of goes around in a circle. And the funnel and the spreadsheet will help with those things. So I guess the simple answer to this question is I avoid writing too much by funneling my ideas from the beginning to where I want to go, and then using the other tools to my advantage. At what stage in a research project do you start writing? I write, personally, I'm designing the presentation from the very beginning. We're just finishing up a research project. We're finishing up getting the research together, and we'll start writing it, as in for the journal now. And I have a full set of slides that tell the basic story. I've got my data, and my team and I have looked at it, and we already know where else we need to dig in deeper before we get the journal article written completely. So for us, it's a mix of putting it together in my head. I have the luxury, I get to pass it out to other people to help. I start the presentation, which is like writing. As data comes in, I start putting the data in the different places in the presentation, which make me think differently and ask for more data, and it goes back and forth for a while. I get the presentation done, and then we go into, okay, where are we going to get it published, and who's the best journal, and what have they done, and we pull down our models, and we start to rework what we did in slides for a journal. So I'm all over it all the time when I'm doing this kind of work, because I have one of those minds that thinks in the picture before I think in the specifics, but the specifics help drive the picture, so I'm always going back and forth. Can I please talk about the revision process for the 3-article dissertation? Struggling with the revisions and submitting to, let me pull this one open, to journals. Yeah, okay. So the revision process for an article then is struggling with revisions and submitting to journals. So let's get one of those articles where you like it, and then look at the others and see whether there's too much overlap or whether there's things that you need to separate. So if you've got all your work done, let me make the assumption from this question that you have all this work done. If you don't, please write real quick so I can revise my question. Okay, so I've got my ideas, and I've put them into the logic of the journal I am writing for. And I have my headings, and I put my points under my headings. And I really know where this is going, and I've got a decent draft, or I've got a decent presentation draft that will flow into this document. That's a good place to stop for a second and think about the other two pieces, just to look for overlap, because that's a danger in the 3-chapter is if you're submitting to 3 different publications, they're going to limit the amount of overlap you can have. If you're doing 3 entirely different things, there's no problem. You're just going to do one, and the revision process is going to be do it, put it together, have Word read it, have someone else read another article in that journal, and then read yours and try to give you an idea of what the other one had that yours doesn't, and revise again. And when you're comfortable with that, send it in, because the peer review will help you take it to the next level. Remember, by the way, if you're submitting to journals, what matters to the editor is whether or not your topic is sexy to them, to their audience. Is it the kind of thing they're looking for? Are they getting enough articles in to help their journals be full enough too? Comes into it. Their articles come and go. The depth of articles come and go. So if you have a sexy topic, they will work with you to get it published. And if you don't have a sexy topic, you're going to have to really make sure you're talking to a journal where your topic fits exactly. So you have to put that hat on of the editor too. There's more to this game, and there's a whole series in PD Education. If you go to Write Your Passion, I did a summer series of 4 that talk through all those intricacies. That might help this person. Oops, okay, let's see. A lot more coming. How do I upgrade? How do I avoid writing too much? I think they're kind of coming in. And what stage do a research project? I've done that. Can you please talk about revision? Okay, not an early bird. Can you talk about use of different tenses, APA? I have a question. My committee and chair do not always provide feedback for ARIA writing. Do you have such suggestions as to how to edit your own work? Oh, you absolutely need to sign up for Monday, September 28th. And I'll show it to you in a minute. It's called Editing Before Hiring an Editor. And then I think you have a whole webinar about that. Do you all have someone to edit your dissertation in writing? No, but frequently people do. And we have a couple of PhDs who have come to us this year who are interested in editing work, and they don't charge what Professor Maria and I charge to look at work. So we may have some moderately priced editors. I can't speak yet to how good they are. But it's useful to have someone else who's looking after the small stuff for you. I got 2 out of 3 done. Speak about journal article submissions. Each journal is very different in how they would like you to, this is the 3, submit your manuscript. How do you manage that? You do what they say. It's a pain in the neck. There are things in our world that are so challenging when you're actually doing them. And you just have to say, yep, this is a pain in the neck, and yep, I have to do this. Now, if you have, and some people just choose not to do it and they farm that work out. Um, and the only danger in farming your work out for editing it, revamping, editing, putting it into the right format, different edges, different everything, is that you have to really check the other person's work, which is almost as irritating as having to do it yourself. So really good questions. Thank you very much, everybody. We are winding down. I lost my place, but I think we had that covered. And I think this was a really excellent use of WooClap. So let me just check to make sure something else hasn't popped in on the top. Good. All right. So thank you for that. Thank you for, let me just go back to my slides and say what's next. So here we are at starting your year with strong writing habits. I hope this was useful. Our communities are beginning to meet. And what is a community? It's an open office hours where you get to come and ask these kind of questions, but everybody there will be in the same phase or have the same ideology or interest as you do. So we hope that exacerbates some really deep conversations. We're having one in an hour and a half an hour at for master's students. So if you're a master's student, come along to that. With data, same thing with the with data people, because they're drilling into finishing, get to meet twice a month, and the next one is Wednesday this week. There is the edit before hiring an editor, and Stephanie is one of our new editors, and she is speaking next Monday, later than usual. So you have a different time frame. And starting research, for those of you that are just getting your handle or know people are just getting their handle on this, that's our next Tuesdays. And then the grad community takes a look at dealing with isolation. Okay, now in the chat, on the use of tenses, I believe if we're stating the theoretical stance of a certain researcher, we can use the simple present cause. The viewpoint, because the viewpoint stated in the published theoretical paper doesn't change. But when we're referring to what some same research has done with data, instruments, and empirical study, the simple past is used. And I have to say, this is what a linguist understands about tenses. So she's spot on, of course. This is her field. So if you absolutely need to drill into it, simple past and simple present can be used for theoretical. Thank you for that, Adrian. I've always just talked about what they said or did, or this theoretical. No, you're right. This theoretical stance is this. Yeah, I see where you're going. And yes, our theoretical base is. This principle seems to apply even to our own argument, and what we have done during data collection didn't change. This study is based. This study was based. I think that might change a little with journals versus dissertations, but I'm not positive, Adrian. How do you sign up for the master's community? You sign in to PD Education, and you go to resources, opt-ins, and all the communities are there. And you can sign up for as many as you want. And with that, what a great conversation. Thank you very much. We will also publish this recording, and for those that weren't able to watch it in person, thank you to everybody in the room. Thank you for using WooClaps. Thank you for helping to make this an interactive community. I hope it serves you. It certainly is interesting for me, and I get a sense that we're really helping where we need to. I didn't have a chance for anybody who had your microphones on to use them. So real fast, if you want to say something, the chat just raise your hand in the chat and unmute your mic for a minute. And if not, good that you had it set up in case that happened. And with that, I will end the webinar. And in a few seconds, it'll kick you out after I end the recording. Thanks, everybody, and bye. See you again soon, I hope.